The free university, historically the fountainhead of free ideas.
Elite academic institutions are in thrall and servitude to the military and intelligence community. Dwight Eisenhower warned about this 60 years ago when he left office. It's because usually Harvard have deans who are more adept at hiding what their true allegiance is. Like usually they're much more skillful at pretending that they're not about that. And they seem to be very kind of right out in the open. And I do think that what that illustrated, when you look at people like David Frum and all of those neocons who lied America into one of the most devastating wars in its history and killed hundreds of thousands of people, if not more, in Iraq, and who instituted a worldwide torture regime, and as you say, have been rehabilitated and are on MSNBC and CNN and at The Atlantic and all these other prestigious magazines, what it really does show is this key fact of political life in the West, which is that war criminals, people who actually commit war crimes, such as the invasion of Iraq, such as torture, such as killing people with no due process, they are never punished. There are never any war criminals in the West who are punished. The only people who are punished, so perversely are the people who expose those war crimes, people like Chelsea Manning. And I think that really reflects the American value structure that long predates Donald Trump's presidency.
One of the main goals of modern intersectionality is to, or prescribe intersectionality, or actionable anti-racism, or actionable men's liberation feminism, in that you have to basically go out and intervene in certain situations that seem to be, not politically correct. You have to go out, intervene in the online world, which means you have hordes of people who click on your video as being hateful. That is soon going to be replaced with a Patriot Act kind of relationship with what is acceptable to say in the public sphere.
All of these institutions that for a good while in America, there was a consensus were at least very troublesome, if not evil, have now become completely rehabilitated. Like every single day I'm reading articles online and in journals from people who identify as being liberals or on the left or Democrats, where basically the CIA is being spoken of as some kind of like woke institution, that's gonna safeguard all of the things about American political life that make it worthwhile.
Now, what's happened instead is that we have basically created the situation where instead of people being aware of the basic emotional labor requirements when it comes to interacting with other people, it's become an excessive burden upon us, because now when you're having conversations with friends, they say things like, "Oh, sorry to put this on you, but I was thinking about this," or "Sorry to drop these feelings on you." You have to just basically at least be conscious of the situation in which, and yeah, we should be doing that. We should be conscious of the situation. But because in a way, this whole ideology, this power equals privilege ideology of what I think is a very racist affirmative action, that we are basically forced to swallow, because some people believe in the infantilization narratives, noble savage narratives, where certain people should have a leg up because of a historical prejudice against them. That idea in itself becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy that solidifies a certain perspective of the world. And one of the basically practical implications of this is that only those who are actually adhere are affected by this ideology, thus limiting the power of the ideology itself, meaning that, and in fact, what it's doing is it's giving power to those who already have privilege. It's actually it's a way of, through the back door, worshiping privilege, like we do in so many respects with regards to modern society, backdoor privilege worshiping. So in this situation, in a collective, let's say, Occupy or democratic sphere where you have a voice, let's say if you're a white male, you're supposed to be hesitant in speaking. And yeah, everybody should be hesitant of their situation. But in fact, what that happens is the people who speak end up being the narcissists who don't care about having that hesitation in the first place, or who have this narrative of having overcome that hesitation. Whereas the people who actually have that hesitation are the ones who are always apologizing for speaking, and these people are stifled, but those are the people that already actually care. So it's a preaching to the choir situation. It's a situation where a lot of our biases are not actually overcome. Now, in response to the power equals privilege narrative, I look at the wisdom of the age. The wisdom of the age was the colorblind perspective.
Okay. Which month is Jewish History Month?
There isn't one.
Oh. Why not?
No.
Do you want one?
No.
I don't either. I don't want a Black History Month. Black history is American history.
How are we going to get rid of racism?
Stop talking about it. I'm going to stop calling you a white man.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask you to stop calling me a black man.
Ironically, the colorblind perspective, which was the old supposed regime of dealing with multiculturalism and interacting sectionalities, let's say, before it became intersectionality, the monolithic intersectionality. Interacting sectionalities, I think, is a much better word, much better phrase, right? Because it doesn't assume that there are all commensurable, it doesn't assume a universality, and it doesn't combine any other ideology like the power equals privilege ideology, this idea that we have to be actively anti-racist, actively anti-sexist. The point of this video, once again, was just to show how the practical ideology, the political philosophy of the intersectionality movement, when it comes to prescription, when it comes to doing things in action, when it comes to that aspect of our collective action, it imposes an emotional labor hesitation that could be merited. But in practice, that emotional labor hesitation only affects people that actually always already cared. Whereas the people who don't care, their voice is actually amplified within the collective circle. And this is an amplification, a narcissistic amplification that is in a way beyond color, right? Because what I'm talking about is actually a little bit beyond color. I'm talking about the people who speak are just the people who don't have the ability to calm their monkey mind, for example. And these are basically the most traumatized people, the people that cannot calm their own monkey mind, right? Or people who can't channel their monkey mind towards a certain media, a certain perspective, a certain meditation, a certain ritual. The people who cannot basically calm their monkey mind. And of course, this camp mentality is what is motivating this securitization, this amygdalic way of seeing threats behind every corner. Strangers are threats. We go to the playground, people, our neighbors are under suspicion. This kind of everyday suspicion, the kind talked about in that book, Liquid Modernity. That is the shock doctrine of the left. That is the shock doctrine of progress that fuels Patriot Act 3.0. Thank you for this short video. All the best.
I know that it's an issue, but it seems like every single day on television I'm talking about race, and it's because of the news cycle, it's in the news, but sometimes I get so tired of talking about it. I want to just go, this is over, can we move on?
And if you talk about it, it exists.
Right.
It's not like it exists and we refuse to talk about it, but making it a bigger issue than it needs to be is the problem we have. Lord, do I wish I was there.
This movie is... As you see, that was quick right there, but there were other comments made to me by Freeman before and after this one.
Little more than a useful idiot, but your approach is ridiculously consistent. Everything you write is shaded in one direction, and when all else fails, you lie with impunity.
It's just pathetic.
It is
it's
pathetic.
Like Lincoln Project level idiocy.
It really is. It really is sad. Like, engage with him on the substance.
Also,
if you like Liz
Joe's smarter
Cheney,
than that. He's actually smarter than to know
yes.
what he's doing here.
Yeah, if you like Liz Cheney, or you at least feel like, okay, there's some merit in what she's doing, and you're not viewing it, like, engage on the merits. But this is a classic, like, textbook example of what they do to dismiss critics who are making uncomfortable points. You just say, oh, you're paid by the Kremlin, you're a Russian agent, you're a useful idiot, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And some percentage of the MSNBC viewing audience will absolutely love that and be like, oh, Joe owned Glenn Greenwald, et cetera, et cetera. But obviously, you're not even dealing with the conversation or the substance of what the critique was to start with.
No, and that's the problem, which is like, look, did Liz Cheney care about rule of law in Iraq? No, actually led to the decline of it, if we want to really start to go there. And I know everybody thinks that's a dunk, but it's true. Like, she literally still will defend the invasion of Iraq, like her and her father, Afghanistan, same thing. How did that work out?
Yeah, let's talk to her about Guantanamo. Let's talk to her about torture. Let's see how she feels about the rule of law
all day long about the Constitution and the country and about rule of law, and I'd be happy to have a conversation if it was real and it was rooted in something. Now, look, I mean, in terms of what she's saying, I don't even really disagree, but in terms of the stuff, it's all about style, I think, really, whenever it comes to this. It's like trying to hold yourself up as a hero and having a lot of media, Time Magazine people or whatever, playing along is nauseating because we know the truth about what this woman believes about real rule of law and about, you like the Constitution unless it's convenient. I mean, Dick Cheney's whole thing is that the Constitution didn't matter, right? And literally, that's your whole family legacy. So, I don't know. On one hand, I do want the Cheneys out of our politics. On the other hand, like seeing the media venerate them, not something I thought I would see in my lifetime. I thought we all agreed around 2005 that the guy's the worst.
It's starting to make me a little bit nervous. Do the rest of us have cause to be concerned about this trend?
Absolutely. A lot of times if you warn of a danger, you have to piece things together in order to demonstrate that it's actually coming. In this case, you don't have to. They're explicitly saying precisely what they want to do. The thing that struck me so much about that John Brennan video is it would be one thing if they were saying, look, there's a band of people, 20 here, 50 over here, who wear swastika armbands, who still are in the KKK. There's maybe 2,000. We need to. That's not what they're saying. What he's saying is the exact opposite. Every group he lifted, even libertarians. It's essentially he's defining the insurgency as anyone who has an ideology other than neoliberalism. In other words, other than the ruling class view that is about to congeal and merge with the power of the state. And what they're talking about explicitly, Tucker, is using the tools that they used to take ISIS off the internet, the tools that they used to destroy Al-Qaeda. They're talking about it as a second war on terror. And that first war on terror, no matter what your views were originally at the beginning of 9/11, ended up eroding not civil liberties just elsewhere, but here at home as well. One that is born by name of being a domestic war on terror designed to essentially criminalize any oppositional ideology to the ruling class. There is literally nothing that could be more dangerous, and it's not fear-mongering or alarmism to say it. There are bills pending by Adam Schiff as well that would simply take the existing war on terror legislation always aimed at foreign governments and foreign actors and simply amend it to say we can now do that within the United States.
And so for me, whistleblowers are so important to this discussion, to everything that we've discussed tonight, and to everything that we might again discuss, because they really see in whistleblowing the ethos that provides the hope that's the antidote for all the things that we've been talking about. And that's the reason, by the way, that there's such a concerted war on them and an effort to frighten and scare people. That's the reason Chelsea Manning was put into prison, into brutal, torturous conditions for 7 years. It wasn't because anyone thought she was an ongoing threat. Obviously, she wasn't. She had no more access to classified information. It was because they want to create a framework where the next person who thinks about being the next Edward Snowden or Chelsea Manning doesn't think, I'm going to become a hero. They think, I'm going to end up in a dungeon. It's the same reason they won't let Edward Snowden come back to the United States, because they know he'll come back to a hero's welcome and spawn additional Edward Snowdens. They want people to be petrified that their lives are going to be ruined if they expose corruption and wrongdoing at the highest levels of the US government. So they recognize what I'm saying as well, the hope that whistleblowers provide so uniquely.
Nothing in this modernization in C-11 changes in any way our rights to freedom of expression. This bill doesn't censor anything. It doesn't change what we can see and what we can't see, what we can hear and what we can't hear. It attempts to achieve greater protections for Canadians, and many different varieties of Canadians, against the powers of the new digital world. I hope we will observe closely how the bill works and be more than prepared to take it up again within the next year or two, I would suspect, if we have the problems that we fear we may have with the failure to make sure that Canadians who are not in the government's intentions supposed to be caught by this bill and differentiate the impact of the act on those people from the impact on the large digital platforms, whether it's the Netflix or the Craze or the HBOs. We're not intending to capture users who place their content on YouTube. One of the differentiations that I found quite useful that I actually heard from Professor Michael Geist was there's a difference between a platform, a place where you can put things, and the word he uses that is curated versus one that is not curated. I wish the government had used that kind of language in C-11 because I think it clarifies things a great deal. In other words, instead of concentrating on who does what on a platform, differentiate between the systems, differentiate between the platforms. So if we were to say, look, there's this area where there's a conscious effort to promote certain content. It's a curated place versus one that everybody in their, well, I won't say everybody their dog, because as far as I know, dogs can't yet do this, although my dog's awfully clever. But everybody can put stuff up, and it's not being curated to meet a certain purpose. If it's being curated to meet a certain purpose or to create different profits, then that would have, I think, been a better differentiation than what we have in C-11. What we have in C-11 has left us divided. And the question, I don't disagree one bit with my colleague from Kitchener Center, that this bill should be much better, clearer on that question of platform versus user.
When it came to copyright, it was like the part of the justices' brains shut off, and they just totally forgot about the First Amendment. You got the sense that deep down, they didn't even think the First Amendment applied when copyright was at issue. Which means that if you did want to censor the internet, if you wanted to come up with some way that the government could shut down access to particular websites, this bill might be the only way to do it. If it was about pornography, it probably would get overturned by the courts, just like the adult bookstore case. But if you claimed it was about copyright, it might just sneak through. And that was especially terrifying because, as you know, copyright is everywhere. If you want to shut down WikiLeaks, it's a bit of a stretch to claim that you're doing it because they have too much pornography. But it's not hard at all to claim that WikiLeaks is violating copyright. Because everything is copyrighted. The speech, the thing I'm giving right now, these words are copyrighted. And it's so easy to accidentally copy something. So easy, in fact, that the leading Republican supporter of COICA, Orrin Hatch, had illegally copied a bunch of code into his own Senate website. So if even Orrin Hatch's Senate website was found to be violating copyright law, what's the chance that they wouldn't find something they could pin on any of us? There's a battle going on right now, a battle to define everything that happens on the internet in terms of traditional things that the law understands. Is sharing a video on BitTorrent like shoplifting from a movie store? Or is it like loaning a videotape to a friend? Is reloading a web page over and over again like a peaceful virtual sit-in or a violent smashing of shop windows? Is the freedom to connect like freedom of speech or like the freedom to murder? This bill would be a huge, potentially permanent loss. If we lost the ability to communicate with each other over the internet, it would be a change to the Bill of Rights, the freedoms guaranteed in our Constitution, the freedoms our country had been built on, would be suddenly deleted. New technology, instead of bringing us greater freedom, would have snuffed out fundamental rights we'd always taken for granted. And I realized that day talking to Peter that I couldn't let that happen. But it was going to happen.